Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. Thank you so very much for tuning in, and stay tuned because on Sunday I'm going to be releasing a video that I think you're really going to want to watch, and I showcase a piece that I captured from my local news media, which I thought was pretty shocking. It was a bit of truth that they let out and then completely ignored and didn't follow up on, and that's where the truth media comes in. But we're told by YouTube that we cannot question well-established historical events like 9/11, etc. So stay tuned for that. And as I mentioned in this interview with Bill Holter, we can no longer rely on YouTube for advertising. Some YouTube channels have been entirely demonetized in this latest wave of fascism from YouTube Big Brother. So as I mentioned in this video, I was once told by my YouTube representative Hadass to go out and build third-party relationships, get your own advertisers, which I did. And now YouTube is interfering with our ability to share those advertisements with our audience because they are interfering in our ability to reach our audience. That's called tortious interference. This video, guys, is brought to you in part by our friends at Virtual Shield. Virtual Shield is one of the easiest VPNs to use in the world. It's one of the fastest in the world, and their no-log policy protects its users from any data breaches. And this month, Virtual Shield is offering a Father's Day celebration special of 20% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, monthly maintenance, phone support, and VIP performance plans for as little as $3 per month. Sign up for a free 30-day trial to Virtual Shield VPN and see what the hype is about. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain, including your privacy. Again, this month, 20% off all VPN plans. I'll leave the link below this video. Hey friends, welcome back. Sean from SGT Report here. Still not deplatformed. That's good. We still have a channel so we can reach you. That's good. Please hit the alert button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please make sure you stay subscribed because YouTube is playing all sorts of games. As you guys know, they're deleting videos. They're deleting entire channels. Free speech is no longer free. Let's put it that way. Guys, we're going to talk about a lot of this stuff today. I've got Bill Holter from JS Mindset on the line to join us right now. Bill, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
Well, thanks for coming on. Let's start with what YouTube has been up to. And specifically, I want people to remember, a lot of people have talked about this, but I want to recall how this all started. All of this started with Carlos Meza from Vox throwing a hissy fit and targeting Steven Crowder specifically. And then YouTube, of course, has Carlos Meza's back. But let me read this to just set the stage, Bill. I'm not sure if you're familiar with all of that stuff I just mentioned, but Dan Bongino, I'm a big fan of Dan Bongino, former Secret Service agent. Dan Bongino tweeted this out on Friday. If a conservative was on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube encouraging people to physically confront and to throw things at liberals to make them fear going out in public, they'd be instantly shamed and deplatformed. When it's a radical leftist like Carlos, they're celebrated as heroes. And then Dan links to this tweet from Carlos Meza saying, milkshake them all, humiliate them at every turn, make them dread public organizing. That was sent out on May 21st. So let me get this straight, Bill. The liberals can advocate violence and intimidation and bullying and hate, but conservatives get banned for merely talking about the deep state and the cover-up of Russiagate, and conservatives, I guess, can't talk about much of anything without fear of being deplatformed.
Well, one side can talk about hate, promote violence, and the other side gets banned for talking about truth.
So what are we going to do about it?
Well, there is a push that's just begun. If you remember back in history, the mid-late 1800s, you had the railroads being broken up because they were too powerful from a monopoly standpoint. The thing here is, for instance, YouTube originally started as a platform, and it's morphed into, if you want to call it, advocacy, one side versus the other. It's like years ago, AT&T, you pick up the phone, you call somebody, it was a platform. That's what YouTube was supposed to be. That's what Facebook was supposed to be. That's what all these social media companies were supposed to be. They were supposed to only be platforms. But now what you have is you've got corporations that are taking sides and advocating one side over the other. and undercutting the side that they don't support, obviously.
Well, in your view, are they clearly discriminating against conservative speech right now? I mean, at this point, I don't think it's deniable that that's exactly what they're doing. They're discriminating against speech they don't like. It's the most anti-American thing I can imagine.
Right. It's the most anti-First Amendment thing you could imagine.
Let me ask you this. Is it also illegal in your view? Because let me just give you a little history here. During the first adpocalypse, you know, because I'm a YouTube partner, they used to do that. I don't know if they still do, but when you hit 100,000 subscribers, you could get a contact at YouTube. And I have one. Her name is Hadass. She's been kind to me.
You got unpartnered.
Yeah, no, I'm still a YouTube partner, but I wonder how long that'll last. You know, we've got to be very careful about our speech now. So that's the other thing they're doing. They're chilling free speech because everybody's afraid of having their channel deleted. So that's the other thing they're doing. They're chilling discourse. So they're already winning in that battle because of what they're doing. But let me ask you this. In your view, is it illegal? Because when the first adpocalypse hit, Hadass and I had a conversation, and she said, what we're encouraging our partners to do is go out and form your own third-party advertising relationships. Don't rely on YouTube for ads. Okay, so I did that. But now, because they've changed their algorithms, my view count is down 40 or 50% versus last year averages. My new subscriber additions are down 90%. So they're now playing middleman, and they're preventing me from reaching my audience. I think that's tortious interference, and it's illegal.
I agree, 100%.
The other thing is that under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, you're right. They're supposed to be a platform where they can't discriminate, right? All they can do is prevent stuff that's violent. Like if somebody is advocating violence, assassination, something absurd like that, that needs to be taken down. The channel needs to be taken down. The authorities need to be contacted. But other than that, free speech is free speech. It should be a level playing field. And the minute they begin acting in a discriminatory way, they become a publisher versus a platform, right? They're picking and choosing what can be seen. And I think that's also illegal.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And can you imagine the uproar from the left if they were being shut down and silenced?
Yeah, I know. And it just begs the question, what is President Trump going to do to protect those of us who stood for him in the last election? Because if this is allowed to continue, we're not going to have voices to help get behind him versus whoever the Democrats run in 2020. So is the antitrust actions against Google, against Facebook, against Amazon, is that going to be enough? What else could he do? I guess he could enforce Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Your view on the antitrust investigations? I mean, that is good news. I wonder what will come of it.
That's hard to say. I mean, at this point, we're still waiting for some big name indictments, arrests, etc. Maybe it all comes together at the same time.
Well, let's talk about Trump and a win, at least in terms of a big win that recently happened. I kind of like this. You'll recall he told us that Mexico would pay for the wall, right? But now we've seen more illegal immigration, people pouring over the borders in droves, more than we've ever seen before. And now, because of the tariffs that are supposed to go in place, because of this war that he's willing to engage in, an economic war against Mexico, get this, Mexico freezes human traffickers' bank accounts, sends National Guard to the border amid very good discussion, this according to Zero Hedge the other day. And apparently in here, they're going to even allow the U.S. government to ship people back to Mexico over the borders. But they've frozen the bank accounts of 26 alleged human traffickers. This is the good news. You got to make Mexico actually do what they're supposed to do to shore up their side of the border.
Right. I mean, that is absolutely good news. And I would ask, where was this news a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think Mexico was just doing its part as a good globalist nation with a president globalist. And the whole strategy has been to keep the borders open and flood this country and bring this country down. The same thing's going on in the EU, which is why Theresa May had to step down, which is why Macron just got defeated by Le Pen. People are fed up with open borders. They're fed up with, anti-sovereignty. They're fed up with the globalist movement to one world government by the New World Order. People are waking up and they're fed up.
Well, Sean, let's talk a little bit about tariffs/trade war. There are no winners in a trade war. I mean, we've seen that, go back throughout history. There are no winners. And the reason the reason tariffs are coming up, the reason we're directly headed toward trade war is because the pie itself is no longer growing, the economic pie. In other words, cash flow is not increasing. And the amount of debt that's expanded year after year after year, as the debt expands, it requires more and more cash flow to service the debt. So if the pie is not expanding, what does a nation do? They devalue or put tariffs up to try to increase their cash flow to make their debt service payments. That's the underlying problem, is that there's too much debt versus an economic pie that's no longer growing. And that's the reasoning behind tariffs, currency war, trade war. The pie is no longer growing.
But I think in the case where our border is absolutely under attack, it is a national security issue. So in this case, a trade war or tariffs, a trade war with Mexico can be used as a weapon to get them to do what they need to do. Now, here's a tweet from Brad Perskel. He says, Mexico sent representatives to Washington as soon as President Donald Trump announced possible tariffs. We are expected to have over 1 million people arrive at our southern border this year. Dems are playing games with the border. The president is not. So I think that is the bottom line here. He's going to use this trade war, tariffs as a weapon.
Well, and I don't disagree. I mean, something has to be done. And you're saying that the Democrats are using the border as a weapon. That's, they're out of their minds. I mean, what was it? The governor of New Mexico 3 months ago was saying, oh, it's all made up, blah, blah, blah. And now screaming bloody murder, we need help. It's the not in my backyard syndrome.
Let me ask you this, kind of a humorous question. If you had to pick one Democrat to be president out of this stable of lunatics that are trying to position themselves for a run in 2020, out of the stable of lunatics, who's the least frightening lunatic?
Oh, geez. That is a comical question. I honestly don't even have an answer for you, because every one of them have scrambled eggs for brains.
Yeah, you know who might be the exception to the rule? Let me take a look. Is Tulsi Gabbard? She's a Democrat, isn't she?
I think so.
Let's see here.
But they're all hell-bent on socialism. And I mean, it's like none of them ever cracked a history book.
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard is indeed a Democrat, and she's the only level-headed Democrat that comes to mind. And of course, she's a veteran. So she actually served her nation, and that would explain, I think, a little bit why she's level-headed. She says, I'm a soldier, and I took an oath to put my life on the line for the people of this country. We must stand united and condemn religiously motivated attacks against anyone, Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Jews, or Christians. An attack against any one of us is an attack against all of us. She seems very level-headed compared to, compare her to Joe Biden. Compare her to Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi or any of the other lunatic Democrats running for president. It's just they have nobody.
Sean, she took an oath to uphold the Constitution against enemies from both outside and within the nation.
All right. That includes the deep state, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey.
Yep.
Well, I hope we see some perp walks here soon. I mean, we keep hearing the Horowitz report is going to be released. We keep hearing that D-class. Oh, by the way, Donald Trump has asked for D-class, and yes. These agencies aren't playing ball.
Yeah,
and keep in mind, they allowed Brennan to keep his clearance. He still has his security clearance because Trump's order to take away John Brennan's security clearance was ignored by those in the intelligence agencies or those in the government required to do it. Bongino said the other day, and I think he was spot on, call these people into the Oval Office, make them explain themselves, and if they do not provide an adequate explanation with a paper trail, fire them.
Right, heads need to roll, absolutely.
All right, my friend, let me ask you this. Economically speaking, Where do we sit? I don't know even know if my audience is interested in the silver and gold story anymore because we've been beaten down for so long. It becomes a little long in the tooth to talk about the dollar collapse and that you should hedge yourself with gold and silver in physical form. I still do that. I know many of our listeners still do that. But what is your view on gold? I think as we're having this conversation today, we're near 1340, 1345. The breakout, I think you've said, should be around 1365. Are we going to see that, or are they just going to beat it down again?
Well, I believe you're actually seeing within these up days, you're seeing beatdowns with paper dumps of contracts. This will be either the sixth time or seventh time in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years that gold has gotten to the 1350, 1360 level. Does it break out this time? My guess is, yeah, it will, because if you look worldwide, there's volatility, there is a liquidity problem. All the problems are just building and building, and gold will be the canary in the gold mine. I've said once you see a 14 handle on gold, it will go into hiding. In other words, you will not see a lot of physical gold available to make purchase.
Right.
And I've cautioned people, be careful what you wish for. A 14 handle on gold and then taking off from there, that's basically the signal that it's game over, and that you will see the financial system the inverse of gold going higher. I mean, gold, $2,000 gold, you're looking at probably Mad Max. And it wouldn't, I mean, $2,000 gold, you'd see it for an instant and be marked up higher from that point. It just seems to me that the Federal Reserve, the central banks all over the world are absolutely backed into a corner. They went for years and years saying, oh, we can normalize our balance sheet. No, they can't normalize their balance sheet. We had three rate hikes, I think. And that is the most pathetic series of tightenings before they're being forced to reverse and lower rates. They're backed into a corner. They cannot raise rates. They cannot normalize. The only thing they can do is lower rates. And again, they're talking about negative interest rates. They have to keep the entire global system on life support. And the question is, how long before the life support fails to keep the patient alive?
Right.
And it all has to do with there is too much debt worldwide. The debt cannot be paid back in current terms.
Right.
That's simple math.
Right. And I think we all know that. The question is, what are the central banks doing? What are governments doing behind the scenes? I think that's what we need to pay attention to, because again, the gold story, the silver story is a little long in the tooth. Meanwhile, the debt continues to go up and up and up. Here's an article from Zero Hedge. It was originally posted at rt.com. In Gold We Trust, waning confidence in U.S. sends world's central banks on a buying spree. Governments around the world have recently been on a gold buying spree. These countries have a tactful reason for doing so, and the reason is directly tied to the anticipation of the inevitable end of U.S. hegemony. So central banks and governments have been buying gold. The average guy doesn't know that. They're not telling you that on the evening news, Bill.
Well, Sean, the central banks have also been buying sovereign debt, busted CMOs, stocks. I mean, the Bank of Japan, the Swiss National Bank, they've got stocks on their balance sheet in the portfolio. Look at the ECB. Look at the percentage of sovereign debt outstanding that they own. The central banks are the only thing holding the system up. And people forget that when the Fed or ECB or Bank of Japan or whoever step up and buy low-rated bonds or stocks or whatever, that is the backing to your money. I mean, if we were having this conversation, say, even 20 years ago, or 15 years ago, we would be completely laughed at, saying it could never, ever happen. And now it's a global event. All the central banks in coordination are propping the financial system up.
Right. Well, you mentioned Mad Max. Let's just talk about that for a second. That would be a currency crisis event to cause a Mad Max-like situation in this country.
Right,
Now, when you and I first started talking about this stuff, we had Zimbabwe as an example. But the more recent, more pertinent example is Venezuela. That's a Mad Max scenario taking place in Venezuela, where people are forced to eat their pets to stay alive because the grocery stores are bare and the currency is worthless.
Right, because the currencies have crashed. But what people need to understand is the currencies will ultimately crash as a reaction to a crash in the credit markets.
Okay.
Currencies don't stand on their own. Currencies are created by the creation of new debt. And when the credit market seize up, and they mathematically will seize up, that directly affects currencies. And of course, you and I talked about this probably, 3-4 years ago, that once the credit market seize up, so does distribution, because everything is manufactured, everything is produced, everything is shipped with the use of credit. And if credit's not available, your Walmart shelves are not going to be stocked.
That's right, because explain that to people. We have a just-in-time food delivery system in this country. So when you walk into your local grocery store, it seems like there's plenty of food for everybody until a crisis hits, and then explain what those shelves look like 2 days later.
Well, look at if you live in an area where there was a threat of a hurricane. Look at how quickly the stores get cleaned out. And there's not little elves in the back room that are growing potatoes and cartons of milk and blah, blah, blah. Those get shipped in. You don't see it because they get shipped in at midnight, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's when the stores are stocked. That's when the stuff comes in. The problem is none of that moves. Let's use the example of wheat for bread. You got the farmer who's got a plant, and farmers always traditionally have to use credit to buy fertilizer, to buy seed, to buy diesel, to buy et cetera, et cetera. So there's your beginning of it. Then they've got to move it to the silo. The silo's got to move it to be not produced. I'm trying to think of the word, to be worked into bread.
Yeah, processed.
Processed, that's the word. So then you've got the processing cost. The processors use credit. And then each time that product moves, it moves by truck, generally. Truckers rely on credit. So every step of the way, and then of course it goes to the grocery store, and the grocery store doesn't pay for it right away. They're on 30-day pay or 60-day pay or whatever. It's all on credit from start to finish. Your loaf of bread, if credit breaks down in any of those links to the chain, the loaf of bread does not end up on the store shelf.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And, I think what I'll do here is plug another sponsor, because you'll recall Hadass said, go out and make relationships with third-party advertisers. Don't rely on us for advertising. And I can't do that anymore. So my thanks to my patrons. But here's a plug, guys. Maybe you need to prepare for this worst-case scenario. I'll leave this link below, mypatriotsupply.com. Right now, you can get a 2-week food supply on sale for $75, or upgrade to a 4-week food supply for $147. It comes in a tactical plastic tub. It's fantastic. 2,000 calories per day with 252 servings in the 4-week food supply. 25-year shelf life. Fantastic products. Click the link below, My Patriot Supply, and you'll be supporting SGT Report. I think at the end of the day, Bill, that's what we need to do. We all need to support each other, particularly as these social media giants are clearly now aligned against us. They're aligned against truth. They're aligned against, when I say us, I mean conservative and libertarian speech, and they're aligned against this sitting president. They are in bed with the deep state.
Right, I agree. Before we cut, I do want to add, a week ago, today's Friday, a week ago, Malaysia came out with 2 statements, and I call it the 1-2 punch. The first one, they called for an Asian gold-linked currency that they can use for clearing trade. And if you go back pretty much within, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours after that statement, that's when gold started this move. Then the following day, they came out and they said that the findings by, I guess it was an Australian slash Dutch report on MH13 was a complete fabrication, and that Russia had absolutely zero to do with downing of that plane. So it was a 1-2 punch against the U.S. And from that point forward, and of course, you also have had nothing but dovish Fed speak all week long. The dollar has been whipped pretty good this week.
So let me just get this straight. What I think you're saying is that maybe the official story that had been shoved down our throats for so long turned out not to be 100% true. Is that what you're saying, Bill?
Yeah, it was fake news.
Because YouTube is now telling us that well-established historical events can no longer be questioned on YouTube. That's literally part of their new rules. So you can't question Sandy Hook. You can't question the Parkland shooting, where now a police officer was arrested and he's being charged. He faces 90 years in prison for standing down and ordering others to stand down. But we can't talk about that. We can't talk about 9/11 anymore, Bill, because YouTube says well-established historical events can no longer be questioned.
Well-established by who?
Exactly.
By who?
The ADL, probably.
I mean, I'm sorry. I call bullshit on that. That's trying to rewrite history.
Yep. It's a modern day book burning. That's exactly what they're engaged in. Orwell couldn't have dreamt it would be quite this bad in 2000. And where are we? 19 versus 1984. I mean, use Google right now as a search engine to find truth. I defy you to find any truth using Google. It doesn't work anymore. And the same is true on YouTube. They are just giving you the establishment version on anything you search for on both Google and YouTube.
Well, and that's why the millennials, the younger people, their minds are poisoned because of the sources that they're getting their information from.
And you know why they had to do this, Bill, right? You know why they're doing this? Because terrestrial cable, terrestrial television, the establishment media is literally dying. Literally dying. CNN's ratings, abysmal. The only people watching CNN are geriatric people. Look at their advertising. It's all big pharma, treating you for your heart ailment, treating you for this, treating you for that. So they're sponsored by big pharma, and they have no audience. The same is true with newspapers. They're laying off people in droves everywhere you look. So that's because the young people are all on YouTube. So they have to change the algorithms on YouTube because they don't want too much truth. They don't want these young people having access to truth.
That's exactly right. And I would ask, where are the apologies? I mean, you got people, you mentioned CNN. You had CNN 24/7 saying, Trump's going to jail. And it turns out, which we knew pretty much from the start, that it was completely bogus reporting. How come no heads have rolled? How come nobody's been fired? How come we don't see any apologies and then just go forward?
That's right. Well, I want to remind people too, I know I have the most generous listeners in the world. You probably know that, Bill. I hear it from authors time and time again. I've never sold more books, they say, than when I came on SGT Report. And that includes going on Coast to Coast or InfoWars. I have the most wonderful supportive audience. What I just want to say, though, and I thank my patrons again, is, guys, you have to remember, CNN pays Anderson Cooper $12 million a year to lie. So you guys, please support the creators that you value the most on Patreon or Subscribestar or wherever they are to get your support. Because, Bill, people will say all the time, we need to build our own platform. Well, Mike Adams did that with Brighton, and there's no audience there. BitChute has a wonderful platform, but the world audience, the global audience, the billions of eyeballs are all on YouTube. So we can talk about building new platforms, and we can put our content there like I do, but that's not where the audience is, Bill.
Well, Sean, you summed it up right at the start. These people are getting paid to blatantly lie. And they pile on each other. So if you, like the saying goes, if you lie long enough, you lie big enough, it becomes truth. But it doesn't become truth. but it's seen as truth. And that's why that's why you have so many, call them snowflakes, that are, can't think their way out of a paper bag.
Like Alexandria Cortez.
Yeah, Sean, I mean, our world has gotten beyond stupid. I mean, how is dodgeball considered bullying or racist? But that's what's happening in the schools. Competing no longer, they don't want anybody to compete. They want everybody to be the same. I mean, it's a socialist recipe for absolute disaster and financial collapse.
Well, and you know what they want?
Collapse.
And you know what they want? They told us what they wanted with that film back in, I think it was 1913. I'm not sure the exact date, guys, Metropolis. They want dutiful worker zombies that are androgynous. That's really what they want. They want to destroy the sexes. They want to destroy the family. They don't want any more children. They don't want us propagating the species. They want to reduce the population. And with those that are left, they want dutiful androgynous worker bees.
Right. Because we are what they call eaters.
Yeah, useless eaters. Isn't that the term?
Yes.
All right. Well, you know what? Most of this speech was off limits with YouTube. So if you're still with us, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And thanks for your support. My patrons really are helping us stay in this fight. So God bless you all. Bill, tell people how they can find you on a daily basis.
You can go to www.jsmindset.com.
Very good. Guys, our guest has been Bill Holter from jsmindset.com. It's always great to get together with you.
Thanks for having me back, Sean.
Yeah, my pleasure. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. You know how much we value you. Give this one a like if you liked it. Pass it on. Pay it forward within your own sphere of social media, because YouTube is absolutely curbing our traffic, curbing eyeballs, unsubscribing people. It's an all-out war on truth. So thank you for standing with us in this fight. And for real news 24/7, you can visit us at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless, guys. Bye-bye.
This is the first in history, a concerted counterattack against the global cabal that is underway at present. There will be antitrust actions. There will be criminal indictments in other nations as well as here.